There are two main types of clauses. Like we've been explaining, we have the independent clause, and of course we have the dependent clause. Okay? Independent clause. An independent clause contains a subject. I've explained this times and again. I said an independent clause contains a subject and a verb and expresses a complete thought. Since this type of clauses is independent, it can stand on its own as a complete sentence. It can stand on its own as what? As a complete sentence. For example, we have Dan extinguished the fire. First of all, Dan is what? As the subject of the sentence. Extinguished is the verb, right? And then the sentence in its entirety makes a complete sense. Okay? So that is an independent clause. Okay? So in this example, Dan is the subject, extinguished is the verb, and a complete thought is expressed. Okay? It makes a complete sense. Therefore, this is both a complete sentence and an independent clause. Okay? It is both a complete sentence and an independent clause. Okay? A dependent clause. A dependent clause also has a subject, and of course it has a verb, but it does not express a complete thought. Since it is dependent, it cannot be a sentence on its own. Okay? Now let us look at. We have an example like this. Because Dan extinguished the fire. Because Dan extinguished the fire, then what happens? Isn't that the question you're going to ask? So what happens? Because Dan extinguished, I walk up to you and say, because Dan extinguished the fire. You're going to ask, then what happened? Okay? So in this example, we have Dan. Okay? We have Dan, still remains the subject. Okay? We have extinguished, which still remains the verb, right? Okay. But it does not express a complete thought. It does not express what? It does not express a complete thought. Therefore, this is a dependent clause. This is what? This is a dependent clause. Okay? This concept of a complete thought can be confusing sometimes. Okay? It can be confusing. So if we have Dan as the subject, extinguished still remains the verb, then what makes this statement different from the example we gave earlier on? And of course, you know that there is a marker. There is a word before the statement because. So because is a marker. It is what? A dependent marker, okay, that comes before it. Now, I'm going to explain further what that means, how you can definitely identify a dependent clause, okay? It comes in a unique way. It will always have a marker right at the front of it that will tell you that this cannot stand alone. Because I am here, I cannot stand alone. So you have those dependent markers. Okay? So the concept of a complete thought can be confusing. Both sentences seem to have the same message. However, the second example is not complete. To distinguish a dependent clause from an independent clause, like I've explained, there is a list of dependent markers. Okay? There is a list of dependent marker words. When one of these words is placed before clause, that clause becomes dependent. In examples, the two clauses are identical except for the because at the beginning of the dependent clauses in example 2. Okay? Because it's a dependent marker word. Okay? So, for you to identify what a dependent clause is, there must be something you must look out for, which is the dependent marker. that comes before the statement usually. Okay, you look for it. I'm going to give you a few lists and then you can source for the other list yourself. I'll give you a table now indicating those markers, okay, the ones that are commonly used. You need those markers, you look at them very well, then you can use them to generate your independent clauses. For example, when I slept, he came in. When is a marker, okay? When at that point is a marker. You understand me? Okay, so we have the table coming up. The table is going to pop up any moment from now, and then you begin to look at the words.